The sun was merciless that day, a blazing ball of fire that hung low over the desert horizon. The earth cracked beneath her bare feet, dust rising with every step as if the land itself rejected her. She was only 13, but her small frame carried a weight far greater than any child should bear. Her belly had begun to show, round and fragile beneath her torn dress, the secret she could no longer hide. The town's whispers had grown into open sneers, and finally they had cast her out like a stray dog. "Go!" the sheriff's wife had spat at her that morning. "We don't need your shame here." The words stung more than the scorching wind. She had begged for mercy, for a place to stay, for a chance to prove she was still human, still worthy of kindness. But no one listened. To them, she was ruined, a girl child who had sinned, carrying a life she never asked for. Her parents had turned away first, their eyes cold and hollow, then the neighbors, then the preacher. By noon she had nothing left but the clothes on her back and the ache of betrayal in her chest. The Wild West was no place for the weak, and she knew it. Wolves prowled the hills at night, bandits roamed the trails, hungry for blood or worse, and the desert itself was an enemy, swallowing the unprepared without pity. Each step she took away from town felt like a death sentence. Her throat burned, her lips cracked, and the child inside her twisted as if sensing her despair. She reached a patch of dry grass and collapsed to her knees, clutching her stomach. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Tears carved clean lines down her dust-covered cheeks. She wanted to scream, to fight, to demand justice, but all she could do was sob softly into the silence of the endless plains. Hours passed. The sky turned red, then purple as the sun dipped low. Hunger clawed at her belly. She had eaten nothing since yesterday, and her body trembled from exhaustion. Thoughts of giving up crept into her mind like shadows. Maybe it would be easier to lie down and let the night take her. Maybe she didn't deserve to live after all, if everyone she knew had cast her aside. Her eyes grew heavy, her body slumped. Just as darkness threatened to claim her, the faint thud of hooves reached her ears. She stiffened, fear shooting through her veins. Outlaws, she thought. Or worse, men from town come to finish what they started. She tried to rise, but her legs betrayed her. All she could do was stare at the horizon. A rider appeared against the fading sunset, tall and straight-backed upon a chestnut horse. As he drew nearer, she saw the braids in his dark hair, the paint across his weathered face. An Apache. Her heart seized with panic. The townsfolk always spoke of Apaches as savages, raiders, killers who showed no mercy. She had heard stories of ambushes, scalps, and bloodied wagons. Now one of them was before her, a silent shadow against the dying light. He slowed his horse, watching her carefully. His eyes were sharp, like an eagle's, but not cruel. He dismounted with quiet grace, boots crunching in the dirt. For a long moment he said nothing, simply standing a few paces away, his expression unreadable. She wanted to crawl backward, to flee, but her strength was gone. She clutched her belly, tears brimming again. "Please, don't hurt me," she whispered. The Apache tilted his head, studying her. Then, without a word, he reached into the pouch at his side and pulled out a small leather flask. He crouched and set it before her, then stepped back, waiting. Her lips quivered. Water, real water. Her pride told her not to trust him, not to take anything from a man who could be her enemy. But her body betrayed her. She grabbed the flask and drank, the cool liquid spilling down her chin, soothing her parched throat. She gasped for air, almost sobbing with relief. When she finally lowered it, the Apache still stood there, his face calm, his hands open, as if to show he carried no weapon against her. For the first time in days, she didn't feel the sharp edge of judgment piercing her soul. His eyes did not accuse, did not condemn. They simply watched, as if trying to understand. The girl hugged the flask to her chest, her heart pounding. She wanted to ask him why. Why had he helped her? Why had a stranger, an outcast of his own kind, shown more mercy in one moment than her whole town had in a lifetime? But no words came. Only silence stretched between them, heavy yet strangely comforting. As the stars began to flicker overhead, she realized something. She was not entirely alone anymore. A stranger had found her on the edge of death, and in his quiet gesture there was a spark of hope, small, fragile, but alive. For the first time since being cast out, she dared to believe she might still have a chance to survive. The night was quiet, broken only by the crackle of a small fire. The Apache had built it with practiced ease, using dry twigs and stones he carried in a pouch. She sat across from him, wrapped in her own arms, still trembling from fear and exhaustion. Shadows danced on his weathered face, making him seem both fierce and kind at once. She had expected him to speak, to demand something in return for the water, but he said nothing. He ate a strip of dried meat, then placed another piece on a flat rock and slid it toward her. Her stomach roared at the smell. She hesitated. Trust didn't come easy anymore, but the fire's warmth and the sharp ache of hunger won. She took it, chewing slowly, her eyes never leaving him. Finally, her voice cracked through the silence. Why are you helping me?" The Apache looked at her for a long moment before answering, his English broken but clear. "Because you are alone." Her throat tightened. Alone. That one word carried everything she had been too afraid to say. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away, unwilling to look weak again. She studied him carefully. He was not old, perhaps 25, with sharp cheekbones and a scar that crossed his jaw. He carried no arrogance, no judgment, only a strange, quiet strength. As the days passed, the Apache did not leave. He taught her how to find water by watching birds, how to eat cactus fruit without cutting her tongue, how to move silently so snakes wouldn't strike. At first, she thought he pitied her, but slowly she realized it was more than that. He had chosen to stay. She learned his name was Tahoma, Water's Edge. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. He told her of his people, driven from their lands, hunted like animals. She saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain she carried, the pain of being cast out. In that, they were the same. One evening, as the fire glowed low, her belly tightened with sudden pain. She gasped, clutching herself. Fear surged. "It's too soon," she whispered. "I can't." Tahoma was at her side in an instant, steadying her trembling body. "Breathe," he said softly, guiding her to lie down on a blanket he had carried. Panic flooded her. She was just a child herself, and now life inside her was demanding to be born. The hours stretched long and brutal. She cried out in pain, her fingers digging into Tahoma's arm. He stayed calm, whispering words in Apache, cooling her forehead with water, holding her hand when the pain was unbearable. The night was endless, but just as the first light of dawn touched the sky, a new sound filled the desert, the sharp, fragile cry of a newborn. Her baby. She collapsed back, drenched in sweat, weak but alive. Tahoma wrapped the child in cloth and placed the tiny bundle in her arms. Her tears flowed freely now, not of sorrow, but of awe. The baby's fingers curled around hers, small and perfect. Against all odds, life had begun anew. She looked up at Tahoma. "If you hadn't been here," her voice broke. She couldn't finish. He shook his head gently. "Life finds a way," he said. But she knew better. It wasn't fate. It was his choice. He could have ridden past, left her to die like everyone else had. Instead, he stayed. He carried her when her legs failed, hunted food when she could not, guarded her and the child through sleepless nights. Days turned into weeks. The girl grew stronger, her baby thriving in Tahoma's care. When danger came, raiders searching the plains, Tahoma fought them off with bow and knife, his skill unmatched. Each time she thought they were finished, he proved that hope was still alive. And through it all, a bond grew, not of romance, for she was still just a girl, but of trust, of shared pain and survival. Tahoma became more than a protector. He was her family when she had none. One morning, she stood at the edge of a ridge, her baby in her arms, the wide plains stretching endlessly below. She thought of the town that had cast her out, of the faces that had turned away. For a long time, she believed their rejection defined her, that she was nothing but shame. But here, with her child safe against her heart, and Tahoma standing quietly beside her, she saw the truth. She was stronger than them. Her baby cooed softly, and she smiled through tears. She wasn't ruined, she wasn't broken, she was alive. Tahoma placed a hand over his chest, then pointed to the horizon. "Future," he said simply. For the first time in months, she felt it. A future, not the one she had imagined as a child, but something new, forged in fire and suffering, shaped by kindness she never expected to find. The Wild West remained cruel, but she no longer faced it alone. And as long as Tahoma rode beside her and her baby's laughter filled the desert air, she knew she would never again let the world decide her worth.